At Axios, we've developed a product that is mobile first. It's a form of writing we call smart brevity. It's short takes and bulletins points where we try to give a story in short format to make you smarter, faster. This is a format that was foreign to me when I was at the Associated Press and when Axios started recruiting me. I had been at the AP writing these long form pieces. And what I noticed is that these stories weren't getting as much clicks or much play. At Axios, the stories were going everywhere. People were reading. In our format, the way we consume news, people are consuming it on their phones. And Axios was a product where it was mobile first, not web first, but mobile first. Covering race and ethnicity, and especially the Latino community, I was interested in trying to take what I knew into this format. So I joined Axios in November of 2020. And immediately, the people at Axios say, we love what you're doing so far, it's hitting, but we are thinking of creating a newsletter around Latino issues. And part of Axios's news model, our business model, are newsletter formats. We do these short, smart brevity pieces in a newsletter format. We send it out to users, and they're consumed widely. So we have a number of things on tech, on politics, on the environment, on business, on markets. And the founders and the editors thought, what if we do this for Latinos? What could you do? And I said, well, I would need help because doing this is a big endeavor. There have been many efforts to reach out to Latinos in an English language format, and many of them have failed. And then the founder said, well, actually, I'm glad you asked because we are talking to Telemundo. Telemundo is willing to partner us. And I really thought Telemundo is a news organization, Telemundo Noticias, is really popular here in the United States. If you're Mexican-American like I am, and you've had elder relatives or people who come from Mexico, they watch Telemundo Noticias. It's the way they get informed. There's a number of stories and formats there that go over the head of a lot of English speakers. And I thought, what if we were to take this content, put it in an English format, and give it in a newsletter format, and have it accessible to everybody? I thought this was a win-win idea, but first we had to figure out how to do that. So then I started conversations with my colleague, Marina, who then, in our first meeting, said, I have some ideas, and this is how we think we should do it.
Collaboration is hugely important, especially in this day and age, because as we have learned once and again, the Latino community across the hemisphere is not a monolith. There's a huge variance amongst us, and that means that there's a huge spectrum of news that is relevant for the whole Latino community and that is important for them to also be made aware of. And so that's how we try to go about a newsletter like ours, by incorporating all these news that maybe is lost somewhere else that other media organizations don't highlight, like what has been the mental health circumstances and effects of the pandemic across the hemisphere, right? So we talk about that. Then while we're talking about that, we find that overdose deaths among Latinos in the US have been the highest during the past year. And so these are stories that are important for us to highlight and that no other news media is necessarily discussing. What do you think, Russ?
Yes, what's interesting working with Axios Latino and working with Telemundo, they provide this beautiful content from Latin America that is really not accessible in English language media. In the United States, we've been obsessed with our COVID, as one might expect. And so we really have taken our eyes off of Peru or what's going on in Mexico outside of the border region. We don't know what's going on in Colombia. And Telemundo, giving us this newsletter and the format, have really educated folks. We've got a lot of positive feedback in that the way we have crafted these stories in the smart brevity format has really attracted a lot of readers. Now, as I, the Axios Latino reporter in the United States, I started looking and questioning what kind of stories are we missing in covering the US Latino population? What are we not covering that has already been covered before? How can we bridge that gap? And what I found there's this hunger, especially as the population grows in the United States, to find out what our political power is. What is our story beyond immigration? How are we mixing in with the movement of Black Lives Matter and the George Floyd death? What are we doing on COVID? And you find a variety of different stories out there. The Right now, Latinos represent about 30 something million, 37 million in the United States, or 40 million, it depends on the numbers you look at. And about 70% of the Latinos here are people of Mexican origin. But yet, when you look at stories, Mexicanos are sometimes marginalized. There are only 2 million Cuban Americans, for example, in the United States, but they have 3 senators. There's 36 million Mexicanos, people of Mexican ancestry, and we also have 3 senators. So this story about a discrepancy, a disparity is something that we want to cover. Why is this? There's a long legacy of discrimination and marginalization in the United States, and we have to cover that and be honest. And Marina, looking at the stories about what's going on in Latin America and in the United States, from what their affiliates are covering, what Telemundo Noticias is covering, has brought a very different perspective, even covering some stories that I didn't even know what was going on, especially in places like Puerto Rico.
Yes. So to sum up, it's hugely important to have newsletters like ours. And I hope people who watch this are also incentivized and galvanized to pick up on those stories that otherwise wouldn't be read, have them be in a short format like our newsletter, or even pitch us stories, give us suggestions. We are more than open to that. And especially now, because we are in talks of having this move from a weekly newsletter to maybe more, heard it here first. And so all suggestions are welcome, especially because we do have the opportunity to also speak with policymakers, with other people. We've had events with representatives like Joaquin Castro. We've had events with the president of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And so we want this to be more than just informative. We want it to be transformative.